on the keys before service, and I said, "Man, you feel good about worship? Y'all sounded great in sound check." He said, "Oh yeah, we'll make sure to set you up and give you a hot mic." But I didn't realize it was gonna be like that today. I don't even know where to go from that. Like, that's crazy. I promise I won't take much of your time. I'm pretty short. I talk fast, and I don't have a ton of. I don't have a very long message for you today anyway, and so I'm not going to drag things out. Some of y'all are already getting hungry. I know how it goes. But I do have some thoughts that I want to share, and man, thank you for trusting me to pastor your teenagers. We got back from camp a couple of weeks ago, and those of you that gave scholarships to go to camp and just prayed for us as a group, we had some amazing breakthrough at camp, and I didn't know what to expect in this post-COVID climate, but it was absolutely incredible. We took like 32 kids to camp on a bus, and it was an awesome week. And our kids ministry just got back from camp, and they're doing another camp in a couple of weeks for K2, for kindergarten through second grade. And so I know God is moving this summer in our next generation, and it's an honor to be a part of it. It's interesting. The Lord put some kind of prophetic unction in my heart in the beginning of this message, and a lot of that was accomplished through the service. So it was really interesting. Like, the Lord put a word in my heart for those that are dealing with anxiety. And then we had that happen in the middle of service. And so I just, maybe a third of my notes I can just scroll through, because we did a lot of that. Like, there was a lot of stuff God did in this moment. And so don't take for granted the fact that we're in a church that prioritizes the presence of God. I think God can speak more in that moment than he can in anything else. Like, we don't just glaze past worship, and we take advantage of being in the presence of God. I'm going to bring part 2 of Won't You Be My Neighbor? And the heart behind this message is Jesus, the friend of sinners. Like, how do we be a friend of a sinner? Again, kind of a moment that Pastor Chuck had here was this burden for the lost that's been so woven into my message this morning, that we would be burdened for the lost, that those that don't look like us, talk like us, act like us, believe like us, that we would get out of our Christian bubble a little bit and begin to interact with people that are different, and even maybe we despise a little bit. So last week was great. If you missed it, I encourage you to catch up on that we just talked about. Pastor preached a great message on kicking off this series, and love your neighbor as yourself. And I love the transparency of a lot of things he said were like, I haven't figured this all out yet. I'm still working on this. Aren't you thankful for leadership that's transparent? Like, we're not coming out of a place of I've arrived and I've conquered all this and I'm the master of everything. Let me teach you how to do it. It's like, I'm still working through this, and the Lord's still dealing with my heart in this. Let's kind of unpack this together. This morning's message will kind of have a similar thought there. The reason why this art of neighboring is so important is because, well, let me tell you a story. So we moved here January of 2018. In December of that year, we brought some cookies to our local fire department. And we live kind of down by Beltway South at church down there. And we brought a plate of like 3 different kinds of cookies to the firemen that are in the fire station right by our house on Buffalo Gap. And so we brought the cookies. One of the firefighters, he was a little younger than me, but he had kids our kids' age. He was super loving towards our son Caleb. Brought him up in the truck. I think Caleb was like a little over a year old, or almost 2. And he brought Caleb up in the truck and took him around and gave him this tour. And it was like awesome. The kids had a blast. The firemen loved the cookies. It was awesome. I found out that they love stuff like that. Like, we thought we'd be kind of a burden, like a tornado of kids. Like, here's all of us and our kids. Like, let's tear up your fire station. They actually love it. And so they treated us really well. And then I think it was a little over a year later. It was the following spring. We have natural gas in our home. And that's not a dad joke. We just really have gas run to. I mean, there's a lot of gas in our home, but we also have natural gas run to our home. And we have carbon monoxide detectors that let you know if there's a leak. And one of the detectors started beeping. If I recall correctly, I was at the office. I was here. The detector started beeping. Maritza freaks out because she's like, I don't know what to do. There's a gas leak. And she gets the kids out in the front yard and calls 911. And they send out a fire truck. And who comes out of the fire truck but one of the men that we had fed cookies to? And in that moment, I was thankful that we were good neighbors to our fire department. And I was thankful that hey, you brought us cookies. Aren't you a pastor? And oh, yeah. And he went to a Church of Christ church here in town, and we connected. It was super awkward because our house was a mess. Like, we weren't ready for house guests. But he's just like, okay, before you go in, can I just go in and straighten up a little bit? They're like, no, you've got a beeping alarm. Like, you stay out here. We're going to go in. And I was thankful in that moment to have neighbored our fire station, because then they remember that. Not saying that they're only going to answer calls to people that bring them cookies, but it kind of felt like, okay, like this mutual, they're going to take care of us, we're going to take care of them. I haven't arrived at this thought, but I have, I'm working on this. And so Pastor Chuck said, I'm going to preach a series on being a good neighbor in the summer, and this was a few months ago. And immediately the thought that kind of dropped in my spirit when he said, I want the staff, some of the staff to preach this as well. The thought that dropped into my head was Luke 19 and the story of Zacchaeus. I've heard it pronounced Zacchaeus. I grew up singing a song, Take Me Back to Sunday School, with the flannel graph and the Cheerios and the orange juice. Does anybody know the song? Zacchaeus was a wee little... There's a reason I'm not the worship pastor, okay? Yeah, you sing it. In a sycamore. I don't know how it goes. It's been a long time. You get the song. This is the story that rushed through my head, and I thought, Jesus illustrated so well what it meant to neighbor somebody. And he invited himself into this guy's home. I want to read you the story, and then we're going to draw 3 quick points out of it. It's Luke chapter 19. If you have your Bible, you can turn there. I'm reading out of the NLT. It'll also be on the screen. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through town. There was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was the chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. Zacchaeus, he said, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, I'll give half my wealth to the poor, Lord, and if I've cheated people on their taxes, I'll give them back 4 times as much. Man, how many of you would love if the IRS said that? Man, we got it wrong. You're getting back 4 times the refund we thought. Jesus responded, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. In Luke 19, what's interesting, in the book of Luke was believed out of the 4 synoptic gospels to be the most accurate, that as far as timeline. So they're all accurate, they're all God-breathed, but Luke was a doctor, and he was very detail-oriented. And he writes in the beginning, I'm going to try to give you the most detailed, accurate depiction of the events that I saw happen. And so he wrote in a very structured, orderly way. And it can be believed, many scholars believe that this is a very accurate timeline. The events we read about in Luke happened in order, whereas some other gospels, maybe the timeline was shifted around, or maybe things happened, they all happened, but maybe they didn't all happen in orders. Like there wasn't necessarily chapter and verse numbers when the word was first written. Does that make sense? We added that later to keep track, but it is believed that Luke's book was very orderly and organized and timeline true. The reason I say that is because in Luke chapter 20, the events begin of Jesus' death. Okay, so Jesus starts the process of being taken to the cross in Luke chapter 20. So the reason I bring that up, Luke 19, you can't help but wonder if Jesus is thinking like a man on a mission. Jesus has this view in his head that he's about to go to the cross and die for all humanity. And what happens right before all of that is this encounter with Zacchaeus. So we're seeing a man with a burden for the lost and a burden for his purpose. I just want to give you the context there. And today I'm going to talk about how to be a friend to sinners, how to have this burden for the lost and befriend them. Not be condoning of their lifestyle, but be a friend to somebody who is in sin. Jesus dined with sinners, but he didn't sin with sinners. He lived in the world, but he didn't live like the world. This is the Jesus paradox. There's a book called The Gospel Comes with a House Key by Rosaria Butterfield. Pastor Chuck may talk about it further down the series. He's the one that told me about it. The Bible teaches that hospitality is not an option, but a requirement for Christians. This is what she writes in this book. We have the opportunity to shine the light of Christ in dark places, even by opening our doors to those who may not know him. We don't compromise who we are, but we love the sinner. It's the point of what I believe Jesus is trying to communicate to us today. There's another book. I'm going to point you with some resources. I want to teach the word primarily, but I also want to help give tools in your hand to help you be a better neighbor to your community. One of those, a book that's really rocked my world in this area is The Art of Neighboring by a guy named Jay Pathak. I think I'm getting his name right. And it's an incredible book on just literally being a good neighbor. And he writes in this book, I have come to believe that as followers of Jesus, one of the worthiest endeavors we can undertake is to take the great commandment seriously and learn to be in relationship with our literal neighbors. Literal neighbors, like the people that live on your left and right, across the street, catty corner to you, like literal neighbors. What can we learn from Luke 19 on being a good neighbor, on being a friend to sinners? And listen, the thought pops into my head too. Everybody in Abilene already has a church. Everybody in Abilene already knows God. Like everybody knows Jesus in Abilene. That's not true. Like it's just not true. Don't use that as a like we live in the Bible Belt. Everybody's a Christian, so I can be a good neighbor, but I don't really believe there's sinners around me. There are sinners around you. And so we have got to be intentional with reaching those people. Number one, from this story of Luke 19, I believe that we can put into practice is make room for interruptions. The Bible tells the story of Jesus. Zacchaeus was not an appointment on Jesus' itinerary. Okay, this was an interruption. He was passing through. In the first verse, it says he entered Jericho and was passing through. This was not a destination spot. He did not choose to be here. He was passing through. How interruptible are you? How much margin for ministry is in your daily schedule? Again, I'm preaching to an imaginary cardboard cutout of myself in the back of the room because I don't build a lot of margin into my life. Am I an interruptible person? Don't get so caught up in the good things that you miss the God things. There was a crowd around Jesus in this story. That's a good thing. A crowd around Jesus. Like people are hungry to hear what he has to say. That's a good thing. But Zacchaeus was the God thing. I think the crowd can represent busyness in our life, that we maybe attract certain things. There's a book called The Tyranny of the Urgent, that we prioritize what is urgent and we become a slave to what is urgent on our schedule instead of making room for interruptions. Are you interruptible? Point number 2. Oh, let me read you this from The Art of Neighboring. Love and hurry are fundamentally incompatible. Love always takes time, and time is the one thing hurried people don't have. Let me read that again. Love and hurry are fundamentally incompatible. Love always takes time, and time is the one thing that hurried people don't have. Are we in so much of a hurry that we're missing God moments in our day? Point number 2, plant some trees. Here's what I mean by that. Somewhere, some time ago, somebody planted a sycamore tree for Jesus. You're like, where'd he go? Somebody planted a sycamore. This is not a sycamore tree. This is just a fake tree we had in the back. But somebody planted a tree that became an opportunity for Zacchaeus to see Jesus. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. Are you creating avenues in your life for people to see Jesus? Are you planting seeds with your life that create an opportunity for somebody to climb and get a closer look at Jesus? Your life should be about sowing seeds to make spaces for people to see Jesus. The world is too short. I don't mean that the world's full of short people. I mean that they can't necessarily see Jesus on their own, or they're not looking for him on their own. Maybe they've been inspired. Maybe there's a holy curiosity. Maybe there's people that are interested in how you live or what you do. But are you creating avenues for people to climb a tree and get a closer look at Jesus with your life? Does your life inspire curiosity? Does it make people interested in Jesus? Are you planting trees? I have a friend who just moved to Austin from the San Antonio area, and he wanted to do a good job of getting to know his neighbors better. And so he started doing it. He loves coffee. He's an absolute coffee nerd. Like, I like a good cup of coffee, but I'm also okay with like Waffle House or gas station coffee. Okay, this guy, no, it's like bougiest coffee setup ever. He's got like 7 different ways of brewing coffee. He weighs it out with a scale. He doesn't measure it, like serious coffee nerd. And so he said, I'm going to take what I have and what I like and use it as an opportunity to get to know my neighbors. And he set up a driveway coffee bar at his new house in Austin. You can see the bougie setup there. Like, and he just serves free coffee to his neighborhood, like one Saturday a month. And he started just, it's called Driveway Coffee. And he has really good, really expensive coffee. It's not Folgers in there. It's really nice coffee. Nothing wrong with Folgers. I'm just telling you, this is what this guy's about. I said, I'll drink Folgers. I don't care. But he's serving his community. He's planting a tree so somebody can see Jesus with his life. He's creating an avenue for some. He's a youth pastor at a church, and his neighborhood may not come to his church, but they'll come to his driveway for a cup of coffee. What are you doing with your life to create trees for people to climb up and get a closer look at Jesus? Driveway coffee, that's so stupid. It's so good. It's so simple. The author of this book writes about block parties. In page 78, I'm going to turn to it real quick and read you about their concept of block parties that you can do. And I love how they unpack this. Vicki Rear, assistant city manager in Arvada, Colorado, has taught our network of churches a lot when it comes to neighboring. At one of our pastors' gathering, Vicki challenged us to encourage and equip the people in our churches to throw block parties. She said it may not sound like a big deal, but a block party movement could have an incredible long-term impact in our community. We've taken Vicki's words to heart and have been amazed to see how effective parties can be in fostering neighborhood relations. Now, we're not talking about an annual HOA block party that only 10% of the subdivision attends. When we use the term block party, we are talking about a party that is thrown by and attended by people who live on a specific block or a group of blocks. You get what he's saying there? This is not like a neighborhood event that some people throw and some people attend. This is for your few houses near you or few apartments near you. Block parties are natural environments in which neighbors will often take steps from being acquaintances to actually being friends. Parties create space for us to talk to others we already know and to meet people we don't. Maybe this is the reason Jesus spent so much time at parties. He knew the power of a party. That's where he launched his ministry. John chapter 2 was at a wedding. He understood they were an important means for people to share their lives with one another in very real and practical ways. Block party, simple way to plant a tree. Get somebody a chance to get a little closer to Jesus. What are we doing to make it easier for people to meet Jesus? It's our job to make the introduction, and it's Jesus' job to change the heart. All we can do is make the introduction. All we can do is plant some trees. All we can do is create a venue to make it easier for people to see Jesus, and once they meet him, he changes them. I would love to change my neighbor's heart. I'd love to change her heart towards her dog. Like I've talked about her dog before. The dog drives me bonkers. I can't change her heart, but Jesus can. And so it's my job to get her to meet Jesus, and then Jesus will deal with the dog. Point number 3, don't limit who you reach because of sin or status. Don't limit who you reach because of sin or status. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. Zacchaeus, he said, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Jesus invited himself over. Now, there's a really low view of tax collectors in the New Testament, and we've talked about this before, but it's important to understand this was a big deal. Because tax collectors were hated for a number of reasons. First of all, just nobody likes to pay taxes, right? Like, especially to an oppressive government that wasn't doing much for them. Like, at the time, the Romans were just oppressing the Jewish people and had them in a headlock. And like, why am I paying for this oppression? I'm funding my own oppression. Okay, so nobody likes to pay taxes, let alone in a good government, let alone in an oppressive one. Number 2, the tax collectors in the Bibles were Jews working for the Romans. So this was Jewish people that were working for the Roman government, and they were seen by the Jewish people as traitors. Like, how could you betray us? You're robbing your own people. They turned their coats on their own countrymen. Third, it was common knowledge that tax collectors cheated people. So not only everybody hates paying taxes to an oppressive government, the Jewish people, they felt like they had been betrayed by their own people to serve the Romans. And number 3, they collected more than they needed and kept the extra for themselves. That's why this was such a big deal, that this guy was so hated. He was so despised. He was so seen as such a sinner because he had 3 strikes against him. 3 things that people hated about him. Are we open to the idea that Jesus may want to change the heart of people that we think may not deserve it? Jesus may want to touch somebody that we don't feel like deserves to be touched. There's a pastor named Rich Wilkerson Jr. He pastors a church in Miami, and he was the pastor that married Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. I think it was in 2015. And he got a lot of hate from the Christian community. Like, how dare you? This couple, they're celebrities, they're horrible, they're an abomination. And he writes this, he says, I think we have to understand that you don't have to approve of someone or agree with someone to always accept them. Jesus, the greatest criticism of him is that he was a friend of sinners and a guest of sinners. I know that's a gray area. Like when you marry somebody, you're kind of signing off on their relationship, and I understand that. And as a pastor that has the opportunity to marry people, to perform ceremonies, that's a hard area for me. But Rich is saying, I'm not signing off on their life or saying that they're perfect. I'm just saying I'm going to serve this couple. Are we okay to let Jesus work in people's lives and not judge people because of their status or their sin? Don't limit who you reach because of sin or status. Number 4, this kind of segues into from what I just said, make religious people uncomfortable. Your activity, the activity of your life, should bother religious people. Like, you should be doing things that make super churchy religious people uncomfortable. This is what Jesus did. Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement, but the people were displeased. He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner, they grumbled. Listen, this was the crowd that was following Jesus. These were followers of Jesus, literally. They were following Jesus. So these were not sinners themselves. They were church people, okay? And they were mad that Jesus was spending time with a sinner. Your lifestyle should bother religious people, even the religious in you. Here's what I mean by that. Jeff Sims is great at that. I don't know, maybe he's in the lobby or the sound, or he's our custodian, but he does so much more than that. And he, before the police really started cracking down on the homeless community loitering around businesses, I would come into the office and he would be doing laundry. And I'm like, Jeff, is your washing machine broken? Like we have a washing machine in the back to wash tablecloths and other things. And I said, Jeff, what's wrong, man? Is your washing machine broken? You gotta come over to the house and wash your clothes or something? Like, what's up? He's like, oh, no, there's this guy, I think Jeremy or whatever his name was. He doesn't have anywhere to wash his clothes, and this is the first time he's had clean clothes in like 14 days. And so I'm gonna wash his clothes for him and give them back to him. And that kind of what Pastor talked about last week, the cynical part of me that bothers, because I'm like, you know, the phrase, you feed a stray dog and they'll come back. You know, I'm like, well, are you really helping them? Or are you doing that? But his heart was so much for helping. And it bothered the religious person in me. It bothered the religious spirit that said, well, they got to get their life together, and they got to go get a job, and they got to go do this, this, and this, and then we'll take care of them, then we'll help them. No, I'm going to help this person regardless of their sin or status, and regardless if all the church people agree with it. Like, what does it really take to run a washing machine for a few minutes and to get this guy some clean clothes? Not a big deal, but it grated against me. Do you do things that bother religious people? Do you upset your own religious agenda sometimes with what Jesus is asking you to do? Number 5, the last point, and this is Pastor kind of preached this for me about the burden for the lost. Jesus' priority was for the lost, and yours should be too. Jesus responded, salvation has come to this home today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save those who are lost. Again, Jesus is living on mission. He's about to go to the cross. He doesn't say, the Son of Man came to make sure the church people like all the music. The Son of Man came to make Christians very comfortable. The Son of Man came to preach nice messages that improve our lives. The Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost. He's going, I'm about to die. This is not going to be in vain. There's a purpose for this. Zacchaeus is on the list of people that need to be saved. He's one of the people I came to die for. I'm about to go to the cross. I'm not wasting time. I'm not playing games. I'm not trying to make a bunch of Christian people happy. I'm trying to seek and save the lost. Jesus lived on purpose to seek and save the lost. Our neighbors need salvation in their house. Our literal neighbors need salvation. I was at the zoo Friday with my kids, and we were at the giraffe exhibit, and we buy romaine lettuce and feed it to the giraffe. Isn't our Abilene Zoo like the greatest thing? Like, we got little kids, and it is the best thing for little kids. Like, it is just amazing. That $70 for the membership every year, it's totally worth it. So we go and we're feeding the giraffes, and the lady there is talking to us about all the giraffes. She knows what she's talking about. She's sharing all the thoughts about all the giraffes. And she said, this one's our oldest male, he's 6. And I said, okay, what's the average expectancy of a giraffe? And she said, well, in captivity, they'll live about 30 years. In the wild, they'll live like 18 to 20. I said, oh, okay, so he's like kind of in his 20s. If he were a human, he'd kind of be in the 20s stage, right? Yeah, so we talk about that. And then I got to thinking, like, wait, why do they live longer in captivity? Like in the wild, in the natural African environment, these giraffes only live to be 18 to 20. In captivity in a zoo, they'll live to be like 30. And she said because when they get older, they isolate themselves. And it's easier for them to be attacked, and it's harder for them to find food when they're by themselves. And I looked over at my wife, and she goes, I know what you're thinking. I'm like, yeah, that's a message right there. The more isolated you are, the easier it is for you to be attacked and the harder it is for you to find food. The Bible says the righteous flourish when they're planted in the house of God. Listen, when we're in community, when we're a part of something bigger than ourselves, when we're a part of a tribe, a group, a life group, a hope group, whatever you want to call it, when you're a part of a church body, you will live longer and you will live better. Listen, I think COVID showed us that people it's easier to become isolated than ever. And your neighbors are isolated, and they are tired of being alone, and they are afraid of what's going to happen next, and they need to be around people. If it's true for Giraffe, it's true for you. We have got to be in community. You have got to be in community. That I was just so struck by that they die because they're isolated, alone, they can't find food. How many of your neighbors are isolated, alone? They went into work from home and never went back. And they're isolated. There's actually studies being done on the effects of what the work from home is doing to the American employee. And the mental toll it's taking on people, that even being in an office and doing a job that you just mostly don't like, that's still better than being isolated and working from home. One more thing I'm going to read to you from The Art of Neighboring about this. A friend of ours, Wes, runs a homeless shelter. A while back, he mentioned to us that most of the people in his shelter ended up there because of isolation. They became distanced from friends, families, and neighbors. And then it really only took one bad break for them to end up on the street. The genius of good neighboring is that it combats such isolation. Taking that pie across the street or just walking over and learning someone's name addresses the issue of isolation in our neighborhoods. Remember, it's easy to make assumptions about other people when you don't really know anything about them. So just continually examine the assumptions or perceptions that you have about your neighbors. Ask yourself, is this an assumption or is this true? Maybe if I got to know him, I would feel different. Jesus' priority is seeking and saving that which was lost. A few chapters earlier in Luke 15, he teaches a message with 3 parts to it about a lost sheep, a lost coin, and a lost boy. You know the story, the prodigal son. In each of those 3 examples that he gives, the priority in the story is on the thing that was lost. This is why on Wednesday nights, and if you're saved, you're a church person, I love you, but on Wednesday nights, I'm the youth pastor, I'm dealing with the teenagers, and I see a student that's brand new that I've never seen before. I don't know if they know Jesus or not. I love you, and Brandon, I'll stop and talk to you in the foyer all day long, but on Wednesday night, I'm worried about that kid that's brand new that I don't know if they know Jesus or not. I love you guys, I love our church family, but my priority is the lost person. In that moment, in those moments where I've got one shot. In the story with the woman with the lost coin, she had other money, but she's not worried about the other money. She's worried about the one coin that was lost. In the lost sheep, he had 99 other sheep, but those sheep don't matter quite as much in that moment. This is why we've got to shift our mentality that maybe this church isn't just for you. Maybe it's for the lost. There was things that happened this morning that maybe made some of you uncomfortable, but somebody's life got touched today. Somebody got a touch from Jesus today. Maybe it's not just about the 99, maybe it's about the one. Maybe we've got to be a little more outward focused to say, if I don't like all the music, if I don't like the lights, if I don't like the fog machine, and I don't like what the youth is doing, I don't like what the kids are doing, maybe it's not about you. Maybe it's about the one lost thing. We love you. I'm glad you're here. But we're also after the lost. Let me just recap and then I'll land the plane. Make room for interruptions. Be interruptible. Make some margin in your schedule. Number 2, plant some trees. Number 3, don't limit your reach because of sin or status. Number 4, go make some religious people uncomfortable. Number 5, Jesus' priority was the lost, and so should ours be. So should be ours. You get what I'm saying. When we lived in Fort Worth, there was a neighbor that lived across the driveway from us, right across the street. And he had a really nice driveway, and he built his fence to slide apart because he had a lot of toys. So he put his ATVs and his four-wheelers and his trailer to haul it all back there. And, you know, every neighborhood has what I call the junkie neighbor. Like, there's just stacks of stuff everywhere, and there's like an old rusted car parked in the yard. Jeff, you know what I'm talking about. Where's Jeff? Jeff is, if you go, my neighborhood doesn't have that neighbor. But I'm sorry to tell you, you are that neighbor. This guy was our neighborhood's junkie neighbor, okay? He had all the ATVs and a two broken down trucks, and like, it was just like the junkie neighbor, right? And across the driveway, and he was the nicest guy, good old boy. He was a part of a group called Rednecks with Paychecks. Basically, did anybody know about this? I didn't know what this was. Basically, it's like he didn't have kids, and him and his wife, they both worked, so they had two disposable incomes, and he spent all his money on toys like trucks and bikes and all that, and went and did like races on the weekend. I didn't even know this was a thing. But he would do these things, like every Friday night, he would set a fire pit in his driveway and invite friends over, and they would do like a little mini bonfire in their driveway and just talk. And at first, it kind of bothered me because I'm like, I'm trying to go to bed. Like, it's Friday night, we got a kid, and I don't want to hear them talking from across the street. But eventually, he started inviting us over, and it got kind of awkward because they drank beer around the fire pit, and I don't drink. And I'm like, I show up, and the first time, he's real pushy with the drink. Like, you want something? I got Bud Light, I got Michelob, and I'm like, no, dude, I don't drink that. And he's like, oh, well, I got other stuff. You want something? You want the hard stuff? And I'm like, no, dude, you got like a cherry Coke or something? Like... And he kind of was why? He was very curious. Come on, inspire holy curiosity. He was very curious. Why don't you drink? And I'm like, can we talk about this later? Like, there's other friends here. Like, this is making me really uncomfortable. I'm not trying to cause a scene. I just wanted a Coke. Like, I just want to sit here and drink something with you guys that doesn't have alcohol in it. Is that okay? This was very uncomfortable, very awkward. But we went over and we had a good time with them, and we got to know them better. And it was this moment where I don't think his name was Alan. I don't think he ever would have come to church with us, okay? And I probably didn't do a great job of inviting him aggressively. But in those moments, I'm building relationship and building connection with Alan around the driveway fire pit. And later on, they go through a season where I start seeing his wife less and less. And it come to find out that they go through a divorce. And they have to sell their house very suddenly. And he is a mess. And you know who he's talking to in his driveway about his divorce? Me. Because we're pastoring him through that moment. He has a resource across the street because I stepped across the driveway and got in some awkward situations, and I planted some trees. Say, you know what? You may never come to church, but I got a tree you can climb if you need to talk about divorce, if you need to talk about what you're going through with your wife. It's okay. Again, I don't have enough trees that I've planted. I've got to plant some more. Okay, there's more opportunities that we can create for people to meet Jesus, and I'm not coming at this from a place that I've arrived and I've done this perfectly my whole life. But I am saying we can do something to help people meet Jesus. I have some homework for you as we walk out today. I want you to download the app. Pastor talked about it last week in case you missed it. There's an app called Bless Every Home. You can go ahead and put that slide up. There's a barcode you can scan, or you can you enter that link, but you have to enter that number, and you're connected. I think like 35 people registered last week, so that's great. And what that does is it shows us a map of who at New Hope is committed to pray for their neighborhood. And it will give you access to the names of the houses around you. And if you know that some of the names are different, or if they're renting and the owner's name is on the house, but it's actually occupied by a renter, you can change the name, change the info. And this barcode's in the bathrooms, on the bulletin boards, and online as well. So you can get it there. That's homework number one. Number two, do something to make a religious person uncomfortable this week. Maybe even the religious spirit inside of you. And then plant a tree. Do something to create a venue for somebody to meet Jesus. Like, start a driveway coffee. Do a garage giveaway. Like, instead of a garage sale, garage giveaway. Just give stuff away for free, because the intention is not to make money. The intention is to meet your neighbors. Okay? Start a yard party, or get an inflatable. Talk to Ruben and Anahi and get an inflatable in your yard. Invite a bunch of neighborhood kids over. Do something to create a tree. Create a venue for somebody to meet Jesus. A block party. Talk to us. If you have something you're seriously going to do and God puts an idea in your heart, we want to know about it. And so we'd love just to talk to you about that. And then finally, some resources I'm going to point in your direction. I have 3 books that will help you grow in this. We can't become good at this overnight. And we can't become good at this in one message. And so some books that have helped me and can help you is The Gospel Comes with a House Key. Wow, that green blends right in. The Art of Neighboring and Friend of Sinners. And so if you would grab one of those books, some of them are available in the app Hoopla for free, which is like an ebook app that syncs with your library card. I just want to challenge you and do something in some way to love a neighbor well. Be a friend of sinners. It was meant as a slight to Jesus. It was meant as an accusation. But may it be said of us as a compliment. Wow, they are friends of sinners. They take this neighboring thing seriously. This wasn't a sermon series that they just went through. This was a commitment to love their neighbors well. If that's you and you want to sign up for this, you want to commit to this on some level, and you're going to follow through on one of my homework assignments, I'm just going to ask you to stand up. We already did some altar ministry time this morning. We did some prayer time, so I'm not going to belabor this. I just want to know who's in. Like, look around. We're in to love our neighbors well. David Gage, is that you? Awesome, man. Good to see you. I miss you, man. Glad you're here. Sorry, I didn't mean to call you out. I was like, anyway. Let me pray for us. Father, we love you so much. Lord, I thank you for those that are standing right now as representatives of New Hope to say, I'm going to bring the kingdom of God to my neighborhood. I'm going to love my neighbors well. I am going to be a friend to sinners. And sign me up, God. Whatever you want, the answer is yes. However you can move, you can move. Whatever you want to do, you can do it in us. God, I pray for resources. I pray for creativity. I pray they go home and at lunch have conversations about creative ways to reach their neighbors, creative things to do. God, give them the resources to accomplish it. Give them the creativity, the drive, the passion. Lord, give us a heart and a burden above all else to reach the lost. In Jesus' name. Amen.